You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Incoming transmission.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Stop blaming the Border Patrol. And we're going to talk about the deep infection, the festering illness that has deeply harmed the Republican Party and potentially crippled them for 2020. All that coming up here on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new Millennial Conservative Resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network and from beautiful Western Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday, the 16th of December in the year of our Lord 2018. Stop blaming the Border Patrol. Yes, stop blaming our Border Patrol. What has been all over the news for the past week? We go to, first we go to the dailymail.co.uk. Former President Vicente Fox says, I hope you get rid of Trump soon. He criticizes President Donald Trump over the death of a migrant girl arrested at the U.S.-Mexican border and his tough immigration policies. Link in the description. You can check this out from our old buddy, former Presidente Vicente freaking Fox. Who, is anybody else just tired as hell of listening to this man's opinion? I mean, you were a shite president in a shite country. What's the deal here? Why does your opinion matter at all? It doesn't make a lick of sense to me now. It did make a lick of sense to me when he started with this, we're not going to build your fucking wall thing. It was stupid. So now he gets to, make a reference and chime in every time there's some piece of controversy here in the United States. No, I don't think so. So we're going to go into it now. Here is the story that has been oft-told throughout the media. This beautiful little girl, okay, name is Jacqueline Kalmakin. She died at an El Paso hospital on December 8th, 2 days after she was arrested with her father and 163 others trying to enter the U.S. at the Antelope Wells port of entry in New Mexico. There's a lot to unpack here. We're going to get to all of it, and we're going to look at it from a couple of different perspectives, and I'm going to present you with an interesting counter-argument to the way this is currently being treated by the media, okay? Fox, who was Mexico's president from 2000 to 6, told TMZ, this is very sad, and it's not the only case. There are plenty more. This is not what the U.S. is all about. This is what Trump is all about. He doesn't have any love, care, or compassion for anybody. Yada, 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 bleeding heart, bleeding heart, bleeding heart. The U.S. was a leader in the world, a compassionate nation, a nation that cares and builds a better world, so I hope you get rid of Trump soon. The language is more aggressive than physical violence. Speaking the way Trump speaks is not good for this nation. Listen to the asininity of that statement. The language is more aggressive than physical violence. So apparently the language that President Trump uses is more violent than if I were to physically punch Vicente Fox in the face. That's not a threat. It's not saying it's something I'm going to do. I'm not a violent guy. But what he is saying here is that it is more aggressive than physical violence. So, President Trump speaking to you is like getting punched in the face, huh? Okay. Please change and change soon because you're not going to be there for long. Asked who was to blame for the death of Jacqueline Call, he added, first, the people that was involved directly, but they act on orders from somebody else, and so you have to go all the way to the top. I would like to present a different argument on this, and I think you're going to see things from my point of view, okay? So, U.S. Border Patrol agents have maintained they did everything they could to save Jacqueline after the girl began deteriorating, despite reports that she stopped breathing more than an hour before she was taken to the hospital. Now, this is all very well and very sanitized if you don't think of the context. And what does the left say? Why, just ask Count Dankula. Screw context. Doesn't matter. Okay? The family has taken, initial screening allegedly showed no evidence of health problems, and Jacqueline's father signed a form indicating she was in good health. However, the family has taken issue with the form because it was in English, shocker, a language that the father doesn't speak or read. He communicated with border agents in Spanish, but primarily speaks the Mayan Quechua language. Okay, so he was communicating in Spanish. The form is in English. Now, common sense would tell you that one of the border agents would explain the document to him that he was filling out and signing in Spanish, which is a language he understands. What's the implication here? That the border agents would be dishonest in what he was signing? We're already painting the Border Patrol as bad actors from the get-go. They say it is unacceptable for any government agency to have persons in custody sign documents in a language that they clearly do not understand, a statement from the family lawyer said. Yeah, that'd be great. If I was arrested in Tehran, I would be presented with documents in Persian, which I don't understand from freaking Adam. So there's that. Okay, guys? Let's think and compare here. If I am arrested in Italy, odds are the documents I'm going to see, initially at least, are going to be in Italian. Jacqueline's family is urging authorities to conduct an objective and thorough investigation into the death and determine whether officials met standards for the arrest and custody of the children. I believe they have. We have some lovely pictures of the family here and the protests that have erupted in El Paso as a bunch of leftists and open border protesters decided to jump in and white knight demanding justice for Jacqueline. Now, I too am going to join in the calls demanding justice for Jacqueline. I want to know when her father is going to be brought up on charges of neglect, child endangerment, and really just gross misconduct as a parent. All right? Unpopular opinion? When is Mr. Carl Marquez going to be brought up on charges for child endangerment? Because, and again, the autopsy is not yet in for the final COD on this, but according to all reports, the girl died of advanced exhaustion and dehydration, which does not occur within a space of 8 hours. And indeed, if exhaustion and dehydration proceed to a certain point, there is a point of no return, and water and food are introduced, it actually accelerates the shock that the body is in, which is consistent with the story we're getting from the Border Patrol, that when they were initially brought to the Border Patrol forward operating base, they were offered food and water. If the child partook of food and water at that point, this may have actually accelerated her shock. It's a variation of refeeding syndrome, if you look that up. So, of course, CNN in Espanol interviewed the father in Guatemala, talked about the extreme poverty of the family, surviving on just $5 a day, made harvesting corn and beans, saying the father wanted to work because he said he could make a better living there. So, why did he bring the little girl? That's the question. When the rest of the family remained behind with the mother and the grandparents. They translated for Jacqueline's mother, Claudia Maquin, who said through tears in the Mayan dialect, every time they ask me what happened to the girl, it hurts me again. She said she hopes her husband is able to remain in the U.S. to work and eventually make enough money to pay the debt they racked up by paying a human smuggler to sneak them into America. Okay? Excuse me. So, the mother remained back in Guatemala, along with the girl's 3 siblings. So why did the father and why did the daughter make the journey alone? These are serious questions that need to be answered. These are questions that people are not asking because they're too busy saying pin the blame on the Border Patrol. In a typical scenario of what you would find, let's give the father and the mother the maximum benefit of the doubt. The father would come to the United States first. The father would come to the U.S. first. Would get into the U.S., start making money, and send for the family to come on over. Why would you take a little girl, a vulnerable little girl, on such a perilous journey and leave her other 3 siblings behind? Why? What would drive you to put the child in danger that way? Unless there's an angle where perhaps they felt the daughter being in the equation would cause the father to have a better case at gaining asylum? Let's unpack this. Let's think critically. Okay, the mother and the 3 siblings remain behind in Guatemala with their grandparents. Poor, yes, staggeringly poor, but relatively safe. Not dying of exhaustion and thirst in the Sonoran Desert. So why did the father bring just little Jacqueline? That is a very crucial question to ask. Now, there's a really great article written by Red State, and it actually gives a pretty solid timeline and breakdown of the incident. It's the most complete I've been able to find. Again, link in description. This is by Streif. I don't know the name of that particular author, but this is a really solid breakdown of the exact time frame. Okay, so here we go. Here's the breakdown. The Department of Homeland Security provided a timeline of events. On December 6, 2018, at 21:15 hours, a 7-year-old Guatemalan minor and her father were apprehended within a group of 163 aliens near Forward Operating Base Bounds. This is in a remote area of New Mexico adjacent to the Antelope Wells port of entry. By the way, here's a map of just how in the middle of friggin' nowhere that is. Okay, I'm going to open this in a new tab. We're going to go for a zoom in here. If you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, you can see this. This is in the middle of the effing desert. It is the middle of God's nowhere. All right, you got Agua Prieta, Antelope Wells leading up to Hachita, Portal, Rodeo. There's the I-10. There's Lordsburg. Okay, Lordsburg right up here, 90 minutes away, is where the girl was brought to the hospital. And then she was flown out to El Paso by helicopter. So it went from Antelope Wells to Lordsburg by vehicle, 90 minutes, and then out to El Paso, out east this way, by helicopter. Middle of God's nowhere. All right, I digress. So let's go back to 100% on here, come back down to the timeline, and let's follow this through. I'm going to bump into a break here, but that's okay. So, given the remote location and size of the group, they were moved to a covered area within the Bounds Forward Operating Base, adjacent to the port of entry. Upon apprehension, the Border Patrol agents conducted an initial screening, which consists of an interview. Okay, so they interviewed the father and daughter. Observation of the detainee, so they observed them to identify any health or safety problems and ensure that they received necessary medical care. The initial screening revealed no evidence of health issues. During the screening, the father denied that either he or his daughter were ill. This denial was recorded on Form I-779, signed by the father. This is the form they were talking about that was in English. But the implication here, given by the Border Patrol, is that he denied that either his or his daughter were ill, and that the initial screening revealed no health issues, okay? They were offered water, food, and had access to restrooms. The Bounds Port of Entry and Antelope Wells Port of Entry were not constructed to hold any sizable population of detainees. Those apprehended in these areas were promptly transported to the nearest Border Patrol station in Lordsburg, 90 minutes away. Now, here's a very important thing, and it's back here in this article a little bit. I'll have to find it for you, but my mouth dropped open on this, okay? The 163 aliens in this group were apprehended by 3, count 'em, 3 friggin' Border Patrol agents, guys. 3. Not 13, not 30, 3. So that's 3 agents available to process 163 people. That is 54 1/3 persons per agent for them to process. So how the hell long do you think that took? And each agent is individually responsible for 54 people. As you can't have 1/3 of a person, obviously, round up to the nearest whole number. Alright, there is no border wall here, by the way. So this is a key point. The Border Patrol agents encountered the father and daughter. The father did not identify his daughter as having any problems. Contrary to what a lot of the left are claiming, they were provided with food and water. Oddly enough, told by colleagues, this is a quote from Red State, that who are emergency room physicians, that giving her food and water may very well have accelerated her body's response to the trauma of several days with little to no food or water. Looks like they had some spelling issues here. Excuse me. Now, December 7th, around 2200, a transport bus was moved from Lordsburg Border Patrol Station to the FOB grounds. It took 2 hours for the bus to arrive at the bounds. Given the size of the group, the capacity of the transport, 50 people, agents began transporting the detainees to Lordsburg in separate groups. First group, unaccompanied alien children, left bounds for Lordsburg at 0018, so 12:18, on December 7th, 2018. It took the bus more than 3 hours to complete the round trip and come back. For a second group, the bus returned at 4 a.m. Around 5 a.m., second group of detainees, including the child and her father, were preparing to depart bounds. The father advised Border Patrol agents that his child had become sick and was vomiting. Out of an abundance of caution, agents immediately requested that an EMT meet the bus on arrival at Lordsburg Station. Now, keep the geography in mind. You remember this? Okay. So this is somewhere in between Lordsburg here and Antelope Wells here, in the middle of this wide open friggin' nowhere. Alright? Keep in mind the geography. Even if they had called for a helicopter, it would have arrived after the bus would have already been at Lordsburg, where the girl could get medical care. The transport arrived shortly before 6:30 in the morning. At that point, the father notified agents that the child was not breathing. Border Patrol EMTs began medical care and requested an ambulance. At this point, her temperature was 105.9 degrees. That's lethal, guys. That is a lethal body temperature. Agents providing medical care revived the child twice. An ambulance arrived at 6:40, so 10-minute response time. A decision was made to transport her by helicopter to a hospital. Lordsburg is more than 4 hours from El Paso by vehicle. The helicopter arrived an hour later at 7:30 and departed 8 minutes later. She arrived at Providence Children's Hospital in El Paso, Texas at 8:51 a.m. Given the flight time and return trip to El Paso, it appears the aeromedical evacuation had already been set in motion. It took an hour 3 flight from Lordsburg to El Paso. The aircraft arrived at 7:30. That implies it was in the air no later than 6:28, which implies it was dispatched before the ambulance even arrived at Lordsburg. So even before the ambulance got to Lordsburg, the Border Patrol knew there was something seriously wrong, and they called for a bird. Border Patrol agents transported the father by vehicle to the hospital. The child received emergency room care, was transferred to the pediatric ICU for additional care. So at this point, the girl is still alive. December 8. Unfortunately, she passed away at 0035, so 12:35 a.m., December 8, 2018. The initial indication from Providence Hospital was that she passed due to septic shock or sepsis shock. Her father was with her. The Guatemalan consulate was notified. The time the child was in custody is irrelevant. The father reported his child was sick at 5 a.m. By 8:51, despite the remoteness of the location, the child was in a pediatric ICU. She was in the ICU nearly 17 hours before dying. So it's hard to see how this child received worse care than a child living in Antelope Wells would. In fact, she probably received better care. There is someone to blame here, and it isn't the Border Patrol. It is the people who are encouraging families to undertake a perilous journey by giving them hope that they can disappear into America while waiting an asylum hearing. It is not the people contesting the Trump administration's policy to not offer asylum to illegal immigrants. It is her father who brought her on this trip to use her as a prop to avoid deportation. The Border Patrol responded above and beyond the call of duty. They deserve our praise and not our contempt. This is from Red State. And I hands down 100% no holds barred agree with this statement. The Border Patrol here is not at fault. I repeat, the Border Patrol is not at fault. And you know what? Sound the alarm. It's rant time. All right, this has been coming for a while, but here we go. I am going to pull a straw man a little bit here because I'm going to create a hypothetical situation that is analogous to what we're seeing here. And hear me out now, all right? All right, you ready? You on board? You good? All right. I have kids. I've got 4 kids, all right? Let's say I was broke, flat broke, you can't afford it, buy it on credit, broke, flat, broke. Lost my job, no hope of anything here in the United States, which, the way things are going online and the way that people are being penalized and persecuted for conservative viewpoint, that could be 2 years from now. I don't know. But let's go with this, all right? So let's say I have an opportunity at a job up in Canada. I have to cross the border illegally to get into Canada. So I leave my wife and 3 of my children here, take 1 of my kids, and I go for the border. I head north, but I do so in the dead of freaking winter because I'm a moron. All right, so I head for the border. Now, in the course of me getting to the Canadian border and getting over the border, for one reason or another, I don't give the kid water. I don't give the kid food. I can't afford it. I can't get it, okay? So we get to the border. We both get arrested by the Canadian Border Patrol, by the Mounties, and the child dies. Knock wood. Never want to think about that with my own kid, but Jesus. The child dies, okay? The kid dies of exhaustion, a thermal shock. In this case, the girl was too hot. Maybe my kid would be too cold because it's Canada, okay? Doesn't have enough to eat, drink. Exact same situation, except me, Canadian Border Patrol. You know what would happen? I would be frigging lynched in the media. I would be hung up by my Buster Browns. I would be nailed to the proverbial cross. They would throw the damn book at me. They would go for child neglect. They would go for abuse. They would go for trafficking a child across state lines, trafficking a child across an international border. I would see the inside of a jail cell for the rest of my life, assuming they didn't stick a needle in my arm friggin' immediately. And they'd be right. They would be right. Because as a father, as a parent, the safety of my child is of the utmost concern. My life means little. The life of my children means everything. So I want to know, what consequences does Mr. Cal Marquez have to look forward to? And if I'm butchering his name, fine, don't care. What consequences is that man looking at when he looked at his 3 kids and decided, I'll take the 7-year-old girl, she's a cute one, takes her up to the border where she dies? And the concept here, again, this is not coming from the family, but you have to think, what type of logical reason do you have for bringing a 7-year-old little girl on a perilous multi-thousand-mile journey across a flaming desert through the barest terrain humanly possible to cross a border illegally? What's going through your head? If it was me, I would rot in jail for the rest of my friggin' life. But it's not me. It's not a white, cis, male American. No, it is a Guatemalan native who speaks some Spanish, makes $5 a day, hucking beans out of the ground, lives in a poverty nation. But as I said, for this scenario, we're in poverty too, okay? For this scenario. And I would go to jail. And you would expect me to go to jail, and I should go to jail. And you know, I don't have all the evidence here, but I think there's a serious case to be made for parental neglect. For any parent who thinks it appropriate to try to smuggle their child in unless there is a gun to the back of their head, literally, not figuratively, let's not say, oh, well, it's a tough environment and there's a lot of crime. No, unless there is literally somebody pointing a gun at me. There is no good reason for me to risk the life of my child in this kind of a crossing. There is no good reason. There was no reason for that child to die. There is no reason that this little girl... Here's the picture of her. There's no reason that this little girl, that Jacqueline, had to die. There is no cause for that. And while everyone else is busy blaming the Border Patrol, and people are going to light me up for victim blaming, where is the responsibility of the parent to not place your child in that lethal danger? Where is the parental responsibility? As fathers, we are called upon to assume the risk, to take the mantle of responsibility for our families, to ensure at the peak their safety, security, and support. My job is to make sure my children are safe, to make sure my children are provided for, to teach my children, to prepare them for this world. That's my role as a father. In this, I don't know how I can get to a place in my mind where I go, clearly it's the Border Patrol's fault. I can't perform those mental gymnastics. I can pretty easily say, what the hell was the father thinking? What the hell was the mother thinking letting them go? Fine, you go. You're not taking the girl. Are you out of your friggin' mind? And this is happening over and over and over and over again. Because a child, in these instances, is seen as leverage. As leverage. I can't get over the border on my own. They won't let me in. But if I have her with me, and I say I need asylum, I need to protect my little girl. Oh, did you not need to protect your wife and the other 3 kids back in Guatemala? Did you have the kids draw straws to see who was going to go on this potentially lethal journey? Is she the oldest? Is she the strongest? What the hell have we come to? Where the first people we blame are the American Border Patrol agents who went above and beyond the call of duty, who struggled desperately and valiantly to save this child in the middle of the godforsaken desert. I have family that live in the middle of God's nowhere here in Arizona. They live in a town called Tonopah. Tonopah is actually about the same distance from a major medical center. Tonopah is about 90 minutes from Buckeye West Valley Regional Hospital. Okay? So if a kid became dangerously dehydrated and heat exhausted in Tonopah, we're looking at a similar scenario here. If you don't live out here, you don't understand this crap. But when you live rural, when you live ranch style, when you live in the mountains or in the middle of the desert, you understand that you can't always depend on response times from police, from ambulances, from fire. A lot of us out here, I'm on a county island, we have a private fire company in order to ensure that there's a good response time. That's something I pay for every quarter. It's a bill I have to pay. It doesn't come out of my taxes. I'm on a county line. You know, for police response, we depend on the sheriff. And the sheriff's got a large area to cover and a lot of workload. And sometimes they can't respond that fast. So we are the first responder. So this father and daughter actually had professionals, had law enforcement officials right there with them to help. And the child still died, despite their best efforts. The Border Patrol today weeps with the family. And The Blaze tells a bit of a different story. If you go to theblaze.com, media says one thing, family says another. Family of young Guatemalan girl who tragically died in CBP custody busts the mainstream media narrative, by Chris Enlow. The family of the 7-year-old Guatemalan girl who tragically died while the U.S. Border Patrol custody earlier this month is disputing the narrative surrounding the tragedy of the mainstream media. What does the family say? The mainstream media's dominant narrative surrounding the young girl's untimely death places blame for the tragedy at the feet of the Border Patrol and immigration officials who are routinely painted in a negative light since Donald Trump became president. In a statement, the lawyers representing the family of Jacqueline Kyle-McKean dispute allegations that she had gone without food and water for several days, in addition to the charge that she had been traveling with her 29-year-old father, Neri Gilberto Cal-Cruz, in the Mexican desert for days before being apprehended by U.S. immigration officials. In fact, Guatemalan consul Tecandi Paniagua told CNN Saturday the girl's father had no complaints about how Border Patrol agents treated him and his daughter. This is according to the Guatemalan consulate, guys. Border agents did everything in their power to help his daughter, he said during a 90-minute bus ride to the border station in New Mexico. It was on that trip Jacqueline suddenly became ill. While Cal did not speak to media directly, he primarily speaks in indigenous Guatemalan in addition to Spanish. His lawyers said he is grateful to the many first responders that tried to save young Jacqueline's life in New Mexico and Texas. Still, the family seeks an investigation that will assess this incident within nationally recognized standards for the arrest and custody of children. The family intends to assist in such an investigation into the cause and circumstances of Jacqueline's death. What that paints this as is a tragedy, which the family wants to cooperate with law enforcement to determine the cause of and nature of, to make sure everything that could be done was done. No different than what you or I would do in a similar situation. We're going to wrap this up, and then I'm going to break for the half. When apprehended by U.S. authorities, Cal signed a form indicating his daughter was in good health. However, the form was in English, a language that Cal neither reads nor writes, an issue his lawyers taken exception with. We touched on this already. She died December 8th in a Texas hospital 2 days after she and her father were apprehended. Cause of death has not yet been released. So, parental responsibility. Where does parental responsibility for placing a child into a dangerous situation stop? And where does the responsibility of the receiving nation start? I would say the responsibility lies more with the initiating party. And a lot of people out there, like Vox and several others, have said the United States is to blame because of our 100 years of intervention in Guatemala and Central America. But that takes individual responsibility out of the equation, doesn't it? At the end of the day, the father made the decision to take Jacqueline on that perilous journey. The mother allowed it to happen. And a little girl died as a result. If it were me, if it were you, if it were anyone within the United States of America, if it were anyone from a westernized country, from a better off country, from Britain, from Ireland, from France, from Germany, from Canada, from Australia, any other country where the population is predominantly white, and I'm going to get lit up for this, if it was from any other nation in the Western world that is considered privileged, the parents would be held responsible and held to the utmost of the law. If you think I'm wrong, there's a bridge located in Kingman, Arizona, that I would like to sell you. Take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to try to calm down a little bit. And we're going to talk about some protests taking place in Europe right now and the disease that is eating our local Republican parties, especially here in my very own district of Arizona, Legislative District 13 of Congressional District 8. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
All right, you're listening to HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. I am going to drop a little bit of wisdom on you today. We've made some big changes on the holonet.com, and you'll be able to find them right about down here in this region here, below all of our stories. And when you're reading a story on the holonet.com, boom, you've got our related products, which you can pick up. These are conservative tomes. These are the sources of our knowledge when it comes to the conservative movement here in the United States. And some of them are just good fun. You'll see here the Constitution of the State of Arizona. You can pick that up. Biopic on Ted Kennedy. Identity Crisis, the 2016 presidential campaign. Rules for Radicals Defeated. And Understanding the Arizona Constitution. Now, these are ads by Amazon. Full disclosure, when you purchase something off of Amazon.com on the HoloNet, that does go towards supporting our page, supporting our content. So please, make sure you check that out on the HoloNet.com. And now, here's the really cool part, our recommended reading list. Now, I posted this back on Facebook a while back, and here we have all the must-haves. The Constitution of the United States and the Federalist Papers, the Bible Promise Book, New World Translation of the Bible, and holy crap, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Jerry Doyle, Ann Coulter, Bill O'Reilly. There's a lot of Beck on here. I read a lot of his stuff. Dinesh D'Souza, Greg Gutfeld, and of course Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. If you want to pick up any of these recommended books, you can do that on the holonet.com/p/Matt's reading list, or just go to the holonet.com, click recommended reading. Finally, to take out a little tour here to the special offers section on the holonet.com. We have a free trial from Audible. You get 2 free audiobooks. You can start your free month of Amazon Prime Video. You can download free Kindle reading app and get $3 towards your ebooks, or start your free trial, your free 30-day trial of Amazon Prime. That's right, the HoloNet is now a member of the Amazon affiliate program. So please, if you want to check out any of those great services, go to holonet.com, click special offers, and get that today. That's on the holonet.com. Now back to the show.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Whew, pretty rare I get off on like a 30-minute rant there, man.
Holy shit, dude.
I know, seriously. I mean, I got all ramped up about that. I gotta calm down a little bit. So let's look at something that there's no way it's gonna make me angry at all. There's no way it's gonna flip me out. And how the West Valley was won or stolen in oh, son of a... Take you to the Arizona Daily Independent, great new publication arising out of Arizona. C. Kramer writes, December 2nd, 2018, so about 2 weeks old. Election days come and gone for races for party leadership have began. While Arizona Democrats will be celebrating the gains made across the state, Arizona Republicans will have a high-profile battle over party positions like chairman that will offer the AZ GOP an opportunity to stay the course or choose a new way forward. Representing the status quo is current chairman Jonathan Lyons, whose hard work on behalf of Ducey and McSally campaigns ought to earn him some loyalty from those groups. However, the AZ GOP was trounced on Election Day. Lyons' hiring decisions caused strife within the party from day one, and most candidates not named Ducey or McSally didn't feel the love the same way the top 2 candidates did. Former Reagan White House alum Frank Thorwald and U.S. Senate candidate Kelly Ward have both announced campaigns for the office, and East Valley activist Tim Horn's name has even been mentioned. To win the race for chairman, you need to secure a majority of votes in the AZGOP's committeemen at the state meeting in January. These state committeemen were all just elected at various legislative and county meetings as part of electing new district county leadership. ADI is getting reports of shenanigans being played by the AZGOP to ensure Jonathan Lyon's slate of state committeemen are elected. The most complete report comes from LD13, my LD, in Maricopa County's West Valley, where officials in charge of the district, along with party officials, managed to break not just the district bylaws and Arizona state law. Unfortunately, it looks like there's nothing that can be done about it. Now, everybody, full disclosure, in the year 2014, I was appointed a precinct committeeman for Legislative District 13 by then Chairman Robert Branch. Subsequently, I didn't really get along with the new leadership, and I was unfortunately not able to make much of a difference as a precinct committeeman in that group, so I did not stand for election following that. So, have that out of the way. Now, Arizona law requires districts to establish nominating committees to provide a fair process for nominating the district's leadership and state committeemen. In addition, a credentials and tally committee is to also be established to certify precinct committeemen present at the meeting are entitled to vote, that proxies are certified, and to count the votes cast. Now, here's the problem. Proxies. Remember that. These committees are supposed to be announced at the monthly meeting before the election. The LD13 chairman and officers ignored this requirement and did nothing to form them. Committees were assembled literally at the last moment. District leaders also ignored the requirement that committees consist only of LD13 precinct committeemen and instead placed AZGOP staffers and volunteers in charge of much of the effort. LD13 also violated all the rules governing ballot access. State law requires that when scheduling a meeting for November 28th, the deadline to submit your name to appear on the pre-printed ballot is November 14th. Yet only a select group of PCs received an email on November 13th asking them to submit their name if they wanted to be a candidate for one of the district office positions. No mention was made of having to submit your name if you wanted to be a candidate for state committeeman or how to get your name on the ballot, nor was any deadline given to appear on the ballot for state committeeman, even though the date was the same. The remainder PCs on the original list didn't receive any email at all. Of course, the email itself doesn't satisfy any legal requirements because the call letter and rules for the meeting must be physically mailed to the PCs by the required date, outlined in the statute as 14 days before the meeting. Yet LD13 officials waited until after the deadline to get the ballot to even mail the call letters, dropping them in the mail on the 17th, 18th, or later. This resulted in many LD13 PCs receiving their call letter a full week after the deadline appeared in the ballot. We will never know if the goal of the leadership team was to deprive precinct committeemen of access in order to control the slate for the incumbent chairman, or perhaps to hide that the legal deadlines had already passed, or both. However, what we need to know is the call letter itself contained no information regarding any deadlines or what precinct committeemen needed to do for their names to be submitted if they wanted to run for officer or state committeeman. So, long story short, I know, way too late. Shenanigans, man. Frigging shenanigans. This is one of the big reasons why I stopped attending these meetings and didn't stand for election following the conclusion of my appointment. It's a big club, as George Carlin once said, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And these are the means that party officials take to ensure that we are never a part of the big club. Now, there's a whole nother page of this. Link is going to be in the description. Long story short, as again, I know, way too late for a long story to be short. There's a whole nother page of this. And it's ridiculous. But the author, C. Kramer, ends out with the following statement that I think is rather succinct. The Legislative District 13 election was a farce, and it deliberately violated LD13's bylaws and the Arizona state statutes. In the end, it produced the result it was designed to. A slate of state committeemen nearly unanimously supportive of maintaining the AZGOP status quo. The question is whether these games will be enough to maintain the Ducey McSally grip on the state party, or if the grassroots will be able to overcome this blatant cheating. We won't know all of those answers until January when the state committee meeting is held, the statutory meeting. But this goes into excruciating detail. about how much of a farce this utterly was. Down to how many names on your proxies you would have to physically fill in, how the voting sheets were arranged in such a way as to make challenging the pre-written ballots virtually impossible. They give you an example. Those with more than 3 proxies and a proxy vote, when I was precinct committeeman for my precinct here in LD13, there could be up to 4 precinct committeemen. I was the only one. But if I had 3 others and not all 4 of us could go to the meeting, I would carry 3 proxies. And I would have 4 votes, essentially. I would be able to vote their proxy. So I would have to handwrite more than 200 plus names onto this ballot in order to vote for somebody other than the pre-designated slate that the party wanted us to vote for. So this is the way that the Republican Party works at the grassroots level. The table is rigged. It is specifically designed to prevent people like you and me, to prevent millennials, to prevent the uninitiated, the average conservative voter from walking in and gaining a foothold and gaining an understanding. You can go to the meetings all you want, and it's like watching paint dry, and I can assure you that you will probably be the youngest person in the room in excess of 20 years if you're 30 like me. I'm 32, actually, before anybody gets any disillusions. But this is the disease that is killing the Republican Party, and quite frankly, why the Democrats will continue to kick the ever-loving out of us year after year after year. Because we are putting these artificial barriers in place to keep new people out and to keep the good old boys and good old gals in. Check your local Republican Party cartel to see if the same applies to you. Some places are worse than others. I know back east in Jersey coming up, man, it was gangster-style crap. But here in Arizona, it is the good old boys and good old gals club. And if anybody from LD13 or anybody from CD8 or anybody from the Arizona Republican Party would like to get on here and tell me how I'm wrong, damn it, get on. I challenge you. Find your local Republican precinct committeeman if you're a Republican. If there isn't one, check into possibly becoming one. But realize these are the hurdles that you're going to have to face. When I walked in there the first time when I was appointed, I was brought in just as there was a shift in power from the previous regime under Dr. Bob Branch, who was the then chairman, to a new chairman. And I was all but silenced because I was brought in under the previous administration. And I spoke with a very loud, very brash voice. And I told the Republican Party, I told those people sitting there in that retirement community country club, I kid you not, that's where this meeting took place, that the biggest problem they had is they were all going to be dead in 20 years. Not kidding. These words came out of my mouth in 2014. Biggest problem is you're all going to be dead in 20 years. And I'm the youngest person in here. And there's only one of me. You're ignoring millennials at your peril. You bandy treated words with us come election season, but when the nuts and bolts need to happen, when there's actual change that needs to be made, when there's organizational structural change within the GOP that needs to be made, they are ignoring the living hell out of the millennial generation, Gen Y, Gen Z. And at the current rate, the Republican Party, as we know it, will be extinct by 2030. Excuse me. Not that they got beaten out. Not that they got overwhelmed by the Democrats. Not that they ceased to be a Republican. No, they're just going to up and friggin' die. Because there are not enough of them left to carry it on. And they're not sending the elevator back down. If you are in the Republican Party, if you're a Republican Party officer, Reach out to millennial conservatives. Involve them in the party. If you have to change the party, I'm not talking about changing the principles. I'm talking about changing the organization and the structure. If you have to change the party in order to make it so they can participate, do it. Your survival literally depends on it. We'll have to wait and see for January whether Arizona gets a new chairman or whether it's the same old, same old. The good old boys and the good old gals voting for each other, locking out new people, and ignoring their constituents for another 4 years. Sad times, man. After I read an article like this, it really does make me look at the Libertarian Party again and look at the Constitutional Party again and just look at the train wreck of our two-party system. Brent Bacchus, another former LD13 committeeman, has been very active online of late. And Brent, sorry to name drop you here. I don't know if you're a listener or not, but whatever. Brent went ahead and redesignated as a conservative independent, and has been hopping on the Facebook groups a lot about being a conservative in exile. I know all about what that feels like, Brent. I know all about it. It's hard to be a conservative in exile. It's hard to try to work your way up through the system, only to be kicked back down, told to sit down and shut up, because you don't understand how it's done. Because you don't have the money, because you don't have the pull, because you don't have the friends. But when you've got the heart, when you've got the passion, this is the 21st century. If you got a cam and a mic and some time to kill, you can make a difference. You can have a voice. And I suppose that's what all this is for. That's what the HoloNet is for. That's what Lanterns is for. That's what all of conservative talk and the blogosphere is for. It is a call out into the night. Not to hear an echo chamber, but to hear that we aren't alone. To hear that there are other people of traditional conservative values, of our own age, and older, who we can learn from, sure. But to know that this type of thought, that this type of culture is not lost, that it's not dying, that it's not dead. Which is why, if you're listening to this, if you hear my words, if you are a millennial, if you're Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever it is, if you're a boomer, join us. And hold that line against the night. Raise your voice into the fray. By the way, working on getting the new crowdfunding site up. Patreon.com/HoloNet is still up for as long as it's going to be. If you want to support us, you can still support us there. I haven't shut it down yet. Or you can check us out on Subscribestar. Link will be in the description. So, whew. We touched on a lot today. I'm pretty tired, man. Jeez. That got me all charged up. But hey, I'm going to end the show. I got like 30 seconds on something a little lighter. Hey, you know you can get the morning after pill in a vending machine now? That's a thing. Thank you, California. It's on the dailymail.com. The Wellness to Go machine. You can get condoms. You can get the morning after pill. What a glorious modern age we live in. You can get a candy bar, you can get a soda pop, or you can get an abortificant. Stay frosty out there, folks. We got to stay in this fight. Good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix.